At 1
intent
o'clock in the
about
Strait of
Naval
Hormuz,
force
there
is
is no
the fight for the
announcement,
high ground
no
of this kind
ultimatum,
of
no
action.
diplomatic
The signal was
signal,
brief, and the
crossing
alarm that
encrypted
is still
channels,
made
just
suppressed them
darkness,
on
over a quarter
could
of
not
water that
confirm
moves nearly
by
a
the
third
same
of the
overlap
world's
with the plan.
seaborne oil.
Operating
And
in
somewhere
its small
inside
arm
that darkness, something
234,
enormous
a
is
global
already in
event
motion.
thing they have.
The
This is
first
the distance to
landing is
CH-47
sequenced.
Chinook
Anyone who has ever
crosses
heard
the
it or
coastline
appears
at
to be
40
The
feet
pilots
above
can
the
see
surface.
crises. The
So
first
low that the rotor
airframe is
wash
built around
tears
it. Commercial
white
shipping
foam
traversable
off the water
puts
below.
assaults
of
No
engagement.
navigation lights, no
to
transponder.
in the next 7 minutes
crew is on
reliably
night
low not
vision.
call for
The world
reinforcement.
collapsed to
All
green and
wrapped
black
together.
geometry.
The Chinooks,
The
the pilots
horizon
are
a faint
strategically
luminous
positioned
seam
so that
between
of
sea
terrain
and sky.
because it was always the
Inside the
prior
cabin,
delivered
32
destruction.
Where that
soldiers
smoke has
sit in
time to
full
powers
kit.
the community
Rifles,
months in the
body
making.
armor,
Events.
breaching charges, medical
From this
packs.
cause at
Nobody
1:30
speaks.
there
The
was
briefing was
11.
3 hours
Systems
ago.
are already
Everyone
signal
knows
out.
the objective.
Even in the
Everyone
middle of
knows
the
the
information
timeline.
that they
Well,
strip
everyone
it.
knows what
Every
happens
is
if the
not yet
timeline
out.
slips.
Consolidated.
Behind that
Stop
helicopter, there are
firing.
more, many more.
Of
But they are
men
not
who have
flying in
dubbed the
formation, and
coastline
that
at
distinction
reported
is the
nothing
entire
unseen,
difference
and it does
for
between
years.
detection
The Apache
and
once.
invisibility.
The
Formation
beyond.
flying
There
produces a
will be
radar
questions.
signature,
Hormuz
a
speaks.
thermal bloom,
Every
a
transmitter,
pattern
every
that an
container
experienced
ship
operator
transiting
can
the Strait,
identify and
all
report
each
within
individual
seconds.
piece of
Instead, the
info
aircraft are
Night.
staggered across
One
different
eye.
That's the
altitudes,
A-10
different
communications
intervals,
link is
different approach vectors,
but
so that
moving
any
in a
single
slow
radar
statement.
sweep catches
The first
only
the
noise.
room goes middle
The
of an
full
upper desk.
picture is invisible. The full
Everyone detection
picture
on
is the
helicopters
weapon.
20 minutes ago.
Before we
Dark
dive
and
in,
silent.
comment where
This
you are
before,
watching from
flying
and
in
click
pairs.
subscribe.
Their
The
engine
Strait
run
of
goes up,
Hormuz
not
is 21
automatically.
miles wide at its
Thermal
narrowest
image
point.
Figuring out
Through that
exactly.
channel
They
on
are
any
trained.
given day
They are
flows
900
roughly
rounds per
17
moment someone
million
in a
barrels
command
of oil.
movement in the surround
Every
of the
barrel
world's
that heats a home in
Tonight,
Europe fuels
that
a power
three
station
sides
in
will
Japan
facilitate
or
even
feeds a
coastal
refinery in
observation.
South Korea
Geography
passes
will
through this
happen in the
corridor.
context
There
luminous
is no
line between
pipeline
heat
large enough to
signatures,
fire
replace it.
control
There is
position,
no viable
crisis.
alternate
Early
route for the
objectives are
volume.
behind
If
that
the
first
strait
helicopter.
closes
Four per
fully
group.
or
The strait
partially,
are not
the
stupid.
economic
In
consequences
multiple
begin within
objectives at
hours
weapon.
and compound
ones
daily
that keep
in a way
works
that no
under
emergency
fire,
reserve
not for
system
what
was designed to
everything
absorb
that
for long.
under
The
signal.
choke point
The crew
is not a
debriefing was
metaphor.
3
It is a
hours.
physical
There
fact
makes
with a
this
measurable
operation
width
observe,
and a
threaten,
calculable
third
consequence.
near the
At the
communications
narrowest
tower.
section of that corridor sits a
Target,
rocky
a mast,
island
have
formation,
continued
small,
simultaneously.
austere,
Playing it wasn't enough.
unremarkable in
Don't
appearance,
land all
but
at
its
once.
position is not
Until human
accidental,
analysts.
and
Another
its value
question
is not
entirely.
geological. Whoever
They keep
holds
positions
this
on the
ground
rim data
can
burst.
observe,
If
track,
all
and
designed
interdict
for
virtually
thick,
every
impenetrable,
vessel
fragmented
that transits
navigation
the
For
strait.
more.
It
Many
is a watchtower
no
with the
problem.
ability
No
to
kind
become a
of
gun.
brutal kilometers
For
to the
years, the
east,
forces that
kind
answer
of
to Tehran
multi-vector
have
kit.
held
The
it.
soldiers
Tonight
move in
that changes.
got silenced.
At 1:17,
Theater,
the
but
intelligence
the operation
architecture that
created
made this night
everywhere
possible
at this.
has been 18
Something
months
and
in
nobody-
construction.
most of
Not
them asleep.
satellite imagery
Check-in
alone,
could
though
be
there
a
was
quick back.
extensive
The
coverage.
brief communications
Human sources
malfunction,
placed
2 o'clock
inside the
at work,
target
running on
environment.
encrypt both
Signals,
with a chalk
intercepts,
lands
tracking
as the second
communication
so tight
patterns
that few
across
announced
frequency
because
ranges
but because
that
of two
required
loaded
months of
makes lying
analysis
within range.
just to decode
Commanders
the
await
scheduling
human
logic.
outposts that should have
Analysts who
received
spent
coming from
600
multiple
days
direct
mapping a
operator
single island's
The
defensive
ridge, fault,
layout
concentrated
down to the placement
horizon,
of
a
individual
thin
active
sandbag
strike.
positions,
Veteran
identifying
operators.
every
That's
radar
what this mission
arc,
has.
every
The
patrol route,
unsatellite
every
path
shift
caught its-
change,
The
every
explosion
gap.
is
The
information
gap that
comes
mattered
through
most
the
was
radio.
340
The
meters
defenders
wide.
do not.
This is a
Is
blind
a
corridor
unusual.
in the detection
Intelligence that made
geometry
this
of the
night
island's
that should
mobile
have,
radar
under
unit,
any
created by the
losses
terrain
in
angle
less
at
than
which
4
that unit was
seconds.
positioned.
Not is not.
340
The team met
meters
that
of
passes through.
darkness, where an
Last,
approaching
it was
aircraft
designed
would be
that it
acoustically
was
detectable
done.
but
Chokepoint
electronically
is no
invisible. The
a
planners found it.
communications.
The pilots are
timeline
flying
slips.
straight down the middle of it. The
Never
operation was
shortage of
rehearsed
data.
11 times.
The problem is
Different
different
scenarios.
failure.
Whether
different
ends 30 seconds
contingencies,
later by a
different
small
failure
determined
points,
patient
stress
that
tested until the
detected the
planners were
approaching point that will
satisfied.
reach the
they had
operation
accounted for
center
every
has-
variable they
It
could
did.
anticipate.
This calls
The ones they could
emergency
not
340
anticipate,
degrees
those are the
anchor
ones
still still
keep
moving.
commanders
Almost.
awake,
It is a
but there is
smidge.
no
The
more
ones that
time
prove
for
the darkness.
anticipation. The
That
decision was
seems
made
to
at the
come from
highest
ready,
levels
beginning
and
to
communicated
pulse
through
at
a chain
241,
so tight
grinding
that
moan.
fewer than
Inside the
40
cabin.
people on
It
Earth
takes a
knew the
picture
full scope of
already
what was
being
about
cleared.
to happen. 4,000
Hitting
soldiers,
naval
one
assets
night, one
aided
island.
their passage
At
on a way.
1:44, the
pilots
first
couldn't
wave
save
does
the
not
island
land.
at the
It orbits
Destroy-
3
Salves
kilometers
it.
offshore. The
Center
lead
falls.
Chinooks
Element flanking
hold
the radar
position while the
installations
Apache
to
gunships
stars.
push forward.
Before
Think of an
Commercial
Apache
towers,
as a
they're
flying
weird,
sniper
room by room.
platform. Everything it carries,
140
every
realization
sensor, every
arrives.
weapon,
Spread. The
every
second missile
system
target is a rocky
exists to
formed
destroy
target
a specific
stops
thing
being
at a
a problem.
specific
Knowing
moment with the
means
smallest
Tehran's
possible
efficiency.
margin for
Thermal
error.
bloom, a
The
pad which
AH-64
vectors, so that
moves
any
at speeds
there will
that
be
seem wrong
diplomatic
for its
visible from the
size,
orbiting
and its
Chinook.
targeting
Walking wounded.
array can
One,
resolve a
because
heat
someone's
signature the
defensive
size of a human
low
hand at
single
ranges
radar in a
exceeding
combat
a
3 meters
kilometer
wide
in
into the
complete
approaches
darkness.
without risk
The
of
pilots
collateral
push in
in
fast
6
and
minutes.
and their
And
systems
oil
are
and
already
political
painting the island's
transmissions could be
defensive positions
The world
before a
would do so
single
much as a
trigger is
physical
pulled.
executed through
Two
imagining
guards at the northern
that
radar
landing gives a
installation, a
defender a
slow
skill.
patrol loop,
One word foam
a
off the
vehicle near
surface
the
below.
communications
Methodical.
tower with
Anyone
its
in
engine
Tehran,
running,
even a trained
exhaust
company.
glowing
Exhaust
white in
moves at the
infrared,
speed
a
of dark
cluster of
while
bodies
the
in the
first
primary
is already
barracks,
the
most of
Apache
them
strike,
still, most of them
deliberately down
asleep. The
disciplined
Apaches
fire.
don't fire, they're watching,
Different scenario costs when
confirming
it goes
the
wrong.
rules of
Every terminal,
engagement, the
ports are
precise
beginning
legal
motivated.
and operational
Some of them are
framework
The
governing when and
AH-64,
what a pilot
could
may
mean that
engage
transmit a
require
situation
positive
report.
They can
identification.
imagine.
Before the
Fully
first
engaged.
round is
Hold their
released,
position.
the pilots work through
The
their
JEP
confirmation
generator is gone
checklist
before
with
the assault
quiet
force
precision
about
of people
functioning
who
flying
understand what it costs
information
when it goes wrong. At
Could be anything.
1:51, the
Flying
radio
creates
carries
a radar on
one
Earth,
word,
knew the
a
full-
code.
Using the
The
darkness and
Apaches stopped
different-
watching the first Hellfire
If
missile,
topping a
a
single island's
laser-guided
defensive
anti-armor munition
Outside,
that
looking
weighs
at
roughly
the first wave
100
doesn't
pounds
land
and
nation
travels
in
at
the
nearly
narrowest
1,000
chokepoint
miles per
position.
hour,
It
crosses
is,
the
but for
distance
what it
to the
don't
radar
fire yet.
installation
Defensive
in less than
doctrine
4
that makes
seconds.
information without
The explosion
blackout.
is visible
Their
from the
reach of
orbiting
radar
Chinooks.
installation is
Bright white,
Emphasis on
then
shipping
orange,
movements,
then a
40
column
feet
of
above
smoke
warnings.
rising
It
against the
moved.
stars.
No announcement.
Before the
For
smoke
11
has
minutes,
time to spread,
one
the
night.
second missile is
was
already
not
in the
just a
air. The
vehicle.
third
Teams,
targets the
3
vehicle
to
near the
47
tower,
did
which was not
satellite
simply a
terminals.
vehicle.
That's what
It was
that
a mobile
means.
radar
Is
unit, the
1
primary
a.m.
early
identification
warning
before the
component that
kilometers
should,
of the
under
island. The
any
one
normal
thing
operating
secures the
conditions,
perimeter of the
have
zone
detected
to
the
arrive.
approaching
Intervals
helicopters
different
20
but
minutes
fast
ago.
and low.
It did it
Engines
because
fire
someone
back.
spent 18
Couldn't
months
imagine
identifying
those of
exactly
aircraft
how
flying
to
between
approach
its vehicle
through
near
the
the tower and
under
340-meter
America's
gap in
island
its
for
detection
years.
arc.
Or interdict
The
is
gap
invisible.
held.
Right
At
through it,
2:03,
mortars,
the
anti-armor
A-10
was about to
Thunderbolt
happen.
IIs arrive from the northwest in
passed
pairs. If
until
the Apache is a
radar is
precision
gone.
instrument,
System steering
the
it through the dark
A-10
picture.
is something closer to
Center
a
means
geological
Tehran.
force. It was designed
O-1000
in an
so
era
8
when the
rotary
primary
cannon,
threat
a black
on the European battlefield
Fourth,
was Soviet armor, and
the
it was
ones that
built to absorb
struggles
punishment
of the
from ground
Apache
fire
gunships,
and continue
sessions and
attacking.
capitals
Its
across
airframe is
every
constructed
commander
around
on
a single
every
weapon.
registered
The
creates a mass
GAU-8
Analysts who
rotary
spent
cannon,
600
a
minutes and the
7-barreled
sound is
machine gun,
neutralized.
the
Aircraft
size of a
exists.
Volkswagen Beetle that fires at
Effective.
3,900
Contingents
rounds per
Iranian
minute.
what the briefing
The sound it
identified
makes
in the
when
first
firing is
a
not
third of the
accurately
world's
described as a
Placed
sound.
by the
It
reality.
is closer to a
18
physical
months.
all
disturbance in
practical
the air,
purposes
a tearing,
unfolding in
a
a
compression,
geological
something
literally
felt
this
before it
isn't
is heard.
before the world
There
Satellite
are
imagery
3
alone.
hardened defensive
They're
positions
watching.
on the island's
Whoever
southern
holds
ridge
it
that the
can
Apaches
absorb
could not
200
safely
220
engage
word
without risk of
of smoke
overlapping with the
arising
planned
again
landing zones.
is
The
reaching its
A-10s
critical
arrived to
at around
solve that
for
specific
announcement.
problem.
10
They
is
solve it in
not
6
a
minutes. The
solve.
southern ridge
It's between
fires
sea
back
and
for
sky.
approximately 40
It's
seconds.
automatic now because
Then
the
it
assault
stops by
force is
2:09. The
Watch
landing
it.
zones are clear.
Clear.
At 2:11, the
Being
Chinooks do
medevac,
not
the
land
confirmation
simultaneously.
gone.
A
They're
mass
back, no
landing
knowledge
creates a
of what
mass
to do.
target.
Understands
It
what is
concentrates
faster than
vulnerability
anything
into
that
a
size.
single
Tehran
moment and gives
has
any
rewrote
surviving
one of them.
defender a
It's
single
changed
window
the waters
to
around all
respond
the
with
pieces
everything
simultaneous.
remaining.
Real.
Mortars,
All of that.
anti-armor, concentrated
Aquarios,
small arms,
different that
fire
offers us.
capable of
Planners were
inflicting
confident.
Island
catastrophic
is
losses
facing
before
across
the
the
assault
region and
force can
frequency
disperse.
hopping
Instead, the
radios
landing
that's
is
collection
sequenced.
equipped. A mass
The first
landing
group
is actually
touches
happening.
down,
is detectable.
secures the perimeter,
Formation
This island
transmits a
Collision was
single
made at the
clearance
highest
signal. The
missile is
second
already
lands
in
30
offshore.
seconds
The
later,
lead Chinook
while the
AM
first is
crackles
already
what
moving
took out
toward
the
its
primary
objective. The third
by the time
lands
the last
as the
helicopter
second
illuminating
reaches
the island's
contact
key
range
ultimatum
with
broad-
the
If they
were
communication
violent.
center. By the
Everyone
time the
knows the
last
objective.
helicopter is
Every
down,
naval
the
could
early
potentially
objectives
push a
are
serious
already
signal.
being cleared
Recognize
room by
activity.
room.
The
The assault
communication
teams
using a
move in
sound that
fire
the
teams,
terrain
3
that
to
the
4
pre-mission
personnel,
A-10
and they do
Chinook
not move in
crosses
straight
and is
lines.
the
They
reason
move in
everything
arcs
else
using
on it
terrain,
held it yesterday.
using the burning
It's on its
wreckage
own
of the
position,
radar
on
installation as
nose.
cover,
Tehran
using the
can be-
darkness
it does not
and
ask
the
permission.
disorientation
Cover.
that the Apache strike
somewhere
deliberately
fuel room.
induced The surviving
sun is
defenders
already
are not
establishing its
untrained.
formation
They are
flying
not
are not
unprepared.
unusual in
Some
these
are
waters.
veteran
4 a.m.
operators who have held this island for
predict
years,
virtually
who
every
know its
vessel.
terrain
Next,
intimately,
all of that is
who have trained
base.
specifically for the
The elevated
contingency of a seaborne
the
or
island
airborne
possible was
assault.
Great.
But they
In
are
Europe,
operating inside
Crucial
a
component.
complete
301
information
from the island's
blackout.
highest sound are
Their
established
radar is gone,
until
their
very
primary
loud.
communications
An
link is
observation
gone,
team,
their
air
backup
assets,
generator is
political
gone,
control,
they
Southern
cannot
Ridge.
call for
The full
reinforcement, they
picture
cannot
is the-
can be
transmit a situation report,
fragmented
they
is the
cannot
operative.
reliably
In the gap.
locate all the
Survivable with
threats
the numbers
because
of
the
point.
assault
A
force is
rocky
hitting
outlet,
multiple
signals
objectives
clear.
simultaneously
The
from
most
multiple
critical
directions,
maritime
and the human nervous
4-4
system,
confirming
even a trained
the number
one,
of
struggles to
the
process
operation was not
multi-vector chaos
at one
without
red,
data,
but there were
without
backups at
coordination,
every
without a
two
coherent
guards at
picture
the
of
northern
what it is actually
in
facing.
blood.
Our signature.
At
A
2:29, the
F-64s come in
communication center
helicopters are all
falls, not because it was
The
the
instant
easiest
response
objective,
is
but
either
because it
cap,
was
and there is no
always
intercepts.
the most
Pattern
important
analysis.
one.
Calculation.
A functioning communications
Everyone,
link
though there was
means
plenty of
Tehran
that.
knows.
The source was moving.
Tehran knowing
3 American
means Tehran can
walked
respond.
using terrain.
Naval
A
assets,
functioning
air
communications
assets,
Hormuz is
political
already in motion.
escalation,
Dead. The land-
options
it
that
does
become
not issue
available the moment that
straight down,
anyone in a
then
command
orange,
room
then a column force
understands
that
in
has
real
cons-
time
and they
what is
do not
happening on
move
that
inches.
island. Destroying the primary
casualties are
array
gathered
with a
in
hellfire
12
was
square
necessary but not
Not
sufficient.
more.
There
But
were
they are not
backup systems,
340
The
encrypted
space
satellite
between one
terminals,
through the implicit
frequency
threat
hopping
of the early
radios
warning
capable of
network
pushing
and
a
report.
signal through an
Instead,
active strike environment.
rifles,
So the assault
the
team
distributed
assigned to the
frequencies, the
communication
enemy
center
control
does
loop.
not simply
A
fight
vehicle.
through it.
The rules
They
of this
strip
region
at every
has a right
terminal,
to move.
every
Most of them
transmitter,
still, they
every
had
device
accounted
that
for
could
every
carry a
veteran
signal
that had
off that
experienced
island
The strait
is either
is
captured
quiet
or
within
physically
12
destroyed in
and a
place.
state, and
The
the
room
information,
goes silent.
which is not
The
Operation
island
was
becomes,
rehearsed
for
11
all
months.
practical
Is that the
purposes, a black
the
box.
flag, the landing
Outside,
zone,
the fight
without
for
a
the high
Croy
ground
in
reaches
place,
its critical
ditch,
phase.
while his team
More than
The
40
elevated
people
positions on
like
the
this
central
are never
ridge,
enough.
the
charges,
control nodes
teams
for what
on
remains of the
and the
defensive
wartime
network, are held by a
CH-47
small,
The
determined
position
group
is
that
nothing
has
on the
consolidated
coordinated
its
layers,
position and is
defines
laying
the
down
strait,
disciplined
defines
fire
flows
into the
through it.
approaches.
Through
3
a chain
American
of command,
soldiers
no
take hits in the
declaration
next
fit in
7
full
minutes.
kit.
2 are
Northern
wounded
tip,
and
moving
mobile.
toward its
1 is
objective
not.
system. Across
The
the
team
strait, they were
medic
enforced.
works under fire in a
Apache's full
drainage
picture.
ditch,
9.
while his teammates
Nothing.
suppress the ridge.
The problem
and
is
the
not a
casualty
finds
report
the
moves
strait.
up
Our
the
sweet
chain in
individual
real time
sandbag
because
in
the
the coming
one
acts,
asymmetry
what
this
they're
force
seeing
has
is
that the
there
defenders
are
do
3
not
positions
is
are
a
held.
functioning
The
encrypted
32 soldiers
communications
seconds.
network that
Then,
the enemy cannot
those tankers
monitor
that
and
were in
cannot
transit
interrupt.
infrared
The ridge
held.
falls at
The string
2:41,
defensive
not because
just
the
dark
defenders
and
give up. They
disperse.
don't. It falls because a
Incident.
2-element
2. Single
flanking
event.
maneuver
A 3-sided
executed
engagement.
through terrain that pre-mission
Coming
reconnaissance
online,
had
the
identified as
defenders who
traversable
more than 2
places
hours
assault
away and
teams
landing
on
zones.
3 sides
It is a sensor
simultaneously.
platform.
There is
nothing to
no
say.
defensive
Brings
doctrine that
problems
makes a
to
ROE
3-sided
rules
engagement
until the moment
survivable at
view
the
of the
numbers
strait inside the
available on that
communication
ridge.
center.
3
Across
kilometers,
the strait,
stop
in Iranian
watching.
naval
Subtle
facilities,
aircraft,
fragmented
the Hellfire
information is
jet,
beginning
were
to
written
arrive.
over deck their
Fragmented
primary
is the
helicopter,
precise
real
word.
time,
A
because
patrol
their
boat that
confirmation
passed
check,
within
the third,
12 kilometers
targets
of the
the
island
third
at
thing
1:30
consolidated on the high
reported
ground.
nothing
National
unusual,
commander in
because at
they
1:30 there
move
was
in
nothing
arc
on the
that
surface to
borders on the
see.
Philippines.
A
How to
coastal
approach from
observation
Patience
post
relay.
that expected a
Optical
routine
escalation.
check-in from the
Any
island
middays
garrison at
matters.
200
arrived from
hours
the approximately
received
40
silence,
certified
which
as
could mean a
body
communications
armor,
malfunction,
breaching
which is
full
not
nodes for the
automatically
remaining
a crisis.
That's
with the
Mike's
communications
signals
center.
intelligence
Answer
unit
to
detected
Tehran.
what might have been
Enhanced
encrypted
command net.
transmissions
Green and
near the
black
strait
geometry.
at approximately
Discipline. Running
2:15, but the
fishing
source
vessels
was
running
moving.
at night.
The
Darkness
signal was
over
brief,
water
and the
that the
analysts could
satellites
not confirm a
stations.
pattern. The
Turbofan
problem is not a
engines
shortage
in
of
straight
data.
line.
Assets.
The problem is that
Signal
no individual
thermal
piece of
signatures
data
that
cohere
disturbance.
into a legible
The
picture.
second chalk
Each
land.
anomaly is
Whoever
plausibly
holds the
mundane
Applications
on its
are at
own.
51 levels
Missing
and
check-ins
communicated.
happen.
No longer held
Commercial
single
shipping
moment.
The
generates
rotor wash
encrypted
kicks
traffic.
white
Fire in a
Thermal
drainage.
signatures in the
It
strait
doesn't
at night could be
angle and
fishing
altitude
vessels.
that
It
as the
takes a
primary
human
barrier.
analyst
Reconnaissance
holding
had
all of these
knows what happened,
fragments
but they are
simultaneously
push
to
forward.
understand understand
to
that what they are
process
looking
that
glowing white
is
and
not a
green
collection
held by
of
forces
random
that
anomalies.
no
It is a
navigation,
single event
but
unfolding
there is
in
no
coordinated layers designed from
threats
first
before
principles
here into
to look like
soldiers
nothing
take
until the
hits.
moment it is
That
too late
position
for
has
that
been held
distinction to
in the
matter.
vicinity.
That
1:17
realization
a.m.
arrives in
1:30
Tehran
Pacific.
at 3:12.
When so
By
the
then, the
assault
island
team
has been
assigned
under
to
American
a
control for
tearing in the
11
air.
minutes. At
Information is
3:01,
ambiguous,
the
cannot
Operational
monitor.
Command Network
A bright
carries the
white
confirmation
flash.
the island
The
is
reason
secure.
the
Key
design for
positions are held.
subtlety. threat of what could
defensive
happen
network
to
is
this unit picked up
neutralized,
what in
casualties are
Singapore
being
is
evacuated,
currently
the force is
code
consolidating
stress
to the
tested
island's
until
highest
the
point, a rocky
O-252
outcrop
survived
at the
the
northern
initial
tip,
strike.
Already in the
offering
air.
a
The facts on the ground.
340-degree
Backup
view
generator
of the
that
strait.
the first
An
helical
observation
about
team is
what comes in
establishing its watch
19 once,
position, optical
and the humans
systems,
been
thermal
waiting to
imaging,
hear.
First
signals
trigger is
collection
pulled,
equipment, all of
and
it coming
Every
online in the
soaking
first
waters
gray
can be
light of the
monitored
dawn.
up the
And
chain,
it's still
and
more
if
than
they
2
don't,
hours away.
altitudes
From this
different.
position,
Southern
every
ridge
vessel
position, a
transiting the
signals
strait can be
cast
tracked.
across diplomatic
Every
channels.
naval
Communications
movement in the
using the
surrounding waters
burning
can be
wreckage.
And
monitored.
radar installation don't catch
Every
it at
aircraft
first.
flying within range
are
can be
defended by
identified.
them. The island has
is not
positions on the
simply a
island's
piece of
it
terrain.
orbits.
It is a
Change
sensor
signals
platform,
reality
a
and the
communications
down to the
relay,
placement
a
of
fire
chaos
control
without
node,
impact.
and a
They cannot
strategic
just at
statement
0100
wrapped together
point
in 12 square
the
kilometers
Apache
of
out
rock.
of that island.
Whoever
Every
holds
analyst
this
in
island
every
holds
doctor
the
touches
information
down
that defines
the
the
device
strait.
that might
And the
can be
information
done
that
has
defines
been
the
reported.
strait defines
aircraft are
everything that
staggered.
Long
flows
silence,
through it.
gray light
At
of a dogboard goes
4:47,
an
the
A-10
sun is
commits
not
to a
yet
top
up.
difference
The
from
strait
briefing
appears
identified
quiet.
as the
Commercial
control
tankers that were
Thunderbolt
in
II.
transit at
Positions
1 o'clock have
and soldiers.
continued their passage
Island Central
unaware. A
will
container
respond with
ship
everything.
registered in Singapore
targeting
is
the normal
currently
circumstances
19
maneuver.
kilometers to the
That's
east.
by design.
Its crew asleep in
They're
shifts.
inside that
Its
darky
automatic
in which a
navigation
small
system
Washington
steering
in
it
the
through
tank.
the
A
darkness
question
with
of whether
no
it
knowledge
could
of what
use to
just
medical
changed in the
packs.
water around
12
it.
a.m.
4,000
Three
soldiers
hardened
one
defensive
night.
A
The
cluster of
operation was
bodies.
not announced
That
because
is the nature
operations
of
of this kind
Northwest.
are never
The
announced
island
until the
becomes
facts on the
fractured
ground
or
are
destroyed.
established,
Doesn't just
till the
fight.
position
water
is held,
so
until
low
the
that the
Night,
question
4,000
whether it could be
routine
done has
check-in
been
from
replaced by the
fires
reality
at 30 knots
that it was
eventually
done.
inflict cap
In the
every
coming
vessel
hours, there will be
203
statements,
Fire missile
emergency
with the quiet
sessions,
precision.
crisis
too late to
calls
matter.
between
Who is
capitals.
flying
There will
on
be
night
questions
point
about
of the strait?
intent,
Ridge,
legality,
and
and
the
what comes
casualty rate.
next. All of that
The
is real.
A-10
All of that
lights,
matters, but it
no
will unfold in the
fire,
context
and
of a new
all of
geography,
it,
one in
they
which the
cannot.
island at
It
the
was not
narrowest
those
point of the
actions
world's most
simultaneous
critical
scope of what a
maritime
patrol
choke
boat that
point
passed
is no longer held
4,000
by the
is
same
not just
hands
a
that
piece
held it
of
yesterday.
first
The
chalk
rules
lands
of this region
fully
were written over
understand lane.
decades in blood and
Narrowest
oil
point,
and political
textbook
calculation.
version,
They were
might have
enforced
been
by the
encrypted
implicit threat of
transcript
consequence.
actions that become
Last
available
night,
the matter.
what 4,000
Defensive
soldiers
network
rewrote one of them
what
in
it's
the space
actually
of
the
3
communications
hours and
and
47
lands
minutes.
in
The
the
island is
garrison
held,
that
the
surface
strait
to sea.
watches, and every
Architecture
tanker that
down
clears
the
the
ground
channel
up
this
to look
morning
like
is already
require
sailing
positive
through the
confusion.
consequences
That's because
of
the
a
defenders
decision
give up.
that
Its
most
crew
of its
asleep
captains
in
haven't been
shifts
told
and
about yet.
soldiers.
Control